This is Mike Tushman. I'm a professor at the Harvard Business School, and I work with colleagues at my firm, Change Logic. I have the honor to chair the Advanced Management Program. My students are executives with substantial experience, and I can tell you what's on their mind, and clearly what's on my mind, and I think everyone who's listening to this, is what's the impact of COVID on innovation and change. I've pulled together my colleagues from Change Logic, Griffin, Noel Sobelman, to talk about our learning about innovation and change during COVID and post-COVID. And so one of the themes in my work, and one of the themes of Change Logic, is how do senior leaders, whether they be my students or our clients, both manage for today and manage for tomorrow, now in the context of COVID. And the pressures for cost on COVID, hey, will they trump the need to innovate for post-COVID? And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to get my colleagues, Christine and Noel, in on this topic. Noel Sobelman is a new hire to Change Logic. He's a wonderfully experienced product and innovation executive with a career working for technology firms before spending the last decade or more as an advisor to CEOs and CTOs on innovation and innovation portfolios. Christine Griffin has been with Change Logic for 8 years. She brings a wonderful depth of experience working with clients in financial services, healthcare, publishing. Let's go to Christine first. From your experience, can you comment on what firms can do to best prepare to win in this post-COVID world, which will require both execution and innovation?
Thanks, Mike. We are seeing a big divide in the clients that we're talking to. On one side, there are firms that are doubling down on their core business, and they're investing heavily in selling more to existing clients. On the other side, I was talking to a CEO last week who said, you know, we had a lot of innovations in our pipeline, in our backlog, that suddenly the market conditions made it right for us to begin investing heavily in these things that we hadn't invested in before. So there's choices that people are making about investing in their core and their, what we call, explore businesses. The most interesting thing I think about the COVID situation is that there was a recent big consulting company said 67% of the firms see this as an opportunity for growth, but 70% of them don't think that they, or feel confident that they have the expertise or the resources to be able to deliver net new opportunities.
What I like to tell my clients is that you need to think of this almost as like an insurance policy. You're insuring yourself against future disruption by investing today in that future, those future growth horizons. So, you know, for example, you might buy an insurance policy on your house. You don't expect your house to be destroyed, but if it does, you want to have that insurance policy.
This topic of innovation and execution is super important, colleagues. But how do firms find the capacity to innovate in the context of execution?
Most companies I deal with, they have a lot of waste in their pipelines, in their development pipelines. So it's good to kind of periodically go through and what can we get rid of? What are those? You need to dynamically prune those low value projects and reallocate resources to those higher value, longer term opportunities. And that's not something you just do once a year. And that's the mistake many companies make. It's a dynamic process. You need to be reviewing your portfolio at least quarterly. And in this environment, you can make an argument that you need to review it even more frequently than that. So you're always looking to clean out the waste, or some people call them zombie projects. Those projects don't really move the needle, but take up scarce resources. So free up capacity to invest in your future so you can have your cake and eat it too. You can have both.
One of the challenges that teams face when they're thinking about innovation is they get very excited about all the ideas out there. It's something that we call the innovation zoo, right? There's so many attractive, interesting animals out there that you could be looking at. And what we advocate is that there is a way to begin to put boundaries around your ideation, define the markets and the business models or the types of problems that you want to tackle as a team. And we call these zones hunting zones. These are places where the ambition that you set before has the greatest need and relevance. It's markets where you are likely to find commercial opportunity. People want it, and they're probably willing to pay for it. The space is rich enough and broad enough that you can identify a couple different ideas in that hunting zone. And it's still specific enough to put boundaries around the innovation so that people are not going off wildly in multiple directions.
Can you say more about how this hunting zone, hunting path, a set of ideas plays in this COVID and post-COVID world?
Let me take a shot at that. In today's environment, uncertainty has been pulled forward into the core. There's a lot of volatility. There's a lot of uncertainty even in the next 3 to 6 months, right? So having defined a hunting zone, it really starts with going out and understanding, going back to your customers and revisiting the problems they're having, because the conditions have changed. So it really starts with understanding deeply the problem, the customer, the problem before you even get to the idea.
Any examples of this hunting path notion, Christine?
Best Buy is one of my favorite examples. Recently, they have established a separate unit called Best Buy Health, and their goal is to serve 5 million seniors and generate $50 billion in digital health by 2025. We all know Best Buy. It started as, a computer store, an electronics store. Now they come into your home and they are able to advise you, and they provide the Geek Squad to provide technology services. As they decided to enter into health, they alone in 2019 invested $1 billion to assemble the capabilities, the capacity, and the customer base to achieve this ambition. They partnered with the alarm company Vivint, and they helped them advise, sell, and install smart home systems for seniors. The next thing they did is they acquired Great Call, which provided them with the big phones that helped seniors to be able to see very simple phones with big numbers. But they were also personal tracking devices for in a home. If you fell, you could push it and it would call help. So they acquired the capability of in-home installation of technical devices and call centers that could respond when there was an emergency. The next capability they added was TytoCare. And this is a medical examination device that can be in the home that allows a doctor, you plug it into your smartphone, has different devices that you can hook up to allow remote diagnosis by a doctor. And then finally, they added something called Biosensics, which is a wearable sensor and predictive healthcare technology. So you can see that they're building their capability in health. So what I find very interesting about Best Buy is they set this ambition. They set this bold, audacious ambition, and they're well on the way to achieving it.
I like the way they had this bold ambition, and they backcasted it to smaller chunks, and they likely learned along the way. So they learned ahead of investing. So rather than spend, we know there's been many examples out there of companies who have spent millions or billions of dollars investing and then finding out once they release a product that it wasn't on the mark, it didn't meet the customer need. They invested in chunks along the way. Doing that, I think, helps a lot with what I talked about earlier regarding managing your portfolio. So you can manage it relative to your capacity to execute. Don't, instead of boiling the ocean, take a stepping stone approach towards that ambition. I think that's a great example.
So I think you both have been talking about, again, discipline and a set of processes to do innovation streams. But mostly, Noel and Christine, it doesn't happen. Mostly incumbent firms, fail to do this, even though we have these processes.
When it comes to innovation, leaders are venturing into a bit of an unknown territory in many categories. They need the confidence to know that they're directing their resources and their leaders and their firm in the right direction. And they look to us and say, how can you help us figure this out? There's a lot of logic behind the choices that they make, but there's also a lot of emotion. You are working with a group of senior executives who aren't sure of what the outcome is going to be. They aren't sure of whether it's going to succeed and how that will reflect on the team and the company.
I would like to say directly to our listeners, we got processes and we got discipline, and we bolt that to emotion. That we do both. We're able to deal with the processes and systems and procedures of ideate, incubate, and scale. And we have this ambition stuff. And this ambition is like emotion. And we're able to combine both logic and emotion in service of, Christine, what you just talked about is dynamic capabilities. I actually learn how to do it over and over and over again.
If I could build on that, one of the values of having playing this advisory role is that the CEO, the C-suite, they get this unvarnished truth. Unfortunately, a lot of times there's some corporate politics. People are couching things a certain way when they're talking to the CEO. We have the benefit of not having to worry about any of that, and we can provide the unvarnished truth about what their message, how it's being received, how it's being reflected in the day-to-day activities, because we're in there in the trenches with the teams that are working to create new opportunities for these companies.
One of the CEOs that we were working with was going slowly through the process of innovation. And I looked him in the eye and I said, "You're going too slowly." And he looked back at me and he went, "Okay." So for a couple months, it didn't change his path. But every time that we would be in a meeting and there would be some slowdown, he would say, "You know what? We're moving too slowly." That's what Christine would tell me.
Let me just sort of summarize this, colleagues. It is what Change Logic does is it helps pretty senior executives bolster their capacity to act. And our dispassion and our ideas and frameworks provide the tools for our clients to do better than the average firm.
Innovation is about making tough choices and sticking to it. So you need an aligned senior team. You need an ambition around which you're aligned that guides the organization. You need a discipline about how you're going to do ideation, incubation, and scaling. And you need an organization that is ready to support that change, both at the leadership level and at the employee level. Change Logic works with senior teams to help bring those tough conversations into the room, to put on the table what the key assumptions are and to push on those and see, if they're right. And are they right in today's market? COVID has dramatically changed this market, and it's changed customers' expectations and customers' behavior. It's changed ecosystems and the way that partners work together in an ecosystem with supply chain choices.
We can provide some leading practices. We can facilitate. We can help to quickly put in place the capabilities, and there's tools to enable that. But the real challenge in getting these disciplines to stick, to be adopted, it really comes in the behavior side of things. So our role really is to help create that behavior change at all levels of the organization, because no process is any good if it doesn't get used and you don't exhibit the behaviors.
But I think what we do is, one, we become trusted advisors. That we have an ability to have relationships with senior individuals and their teams, and we help them in this capacity to act. This notion of core and explore is really difficult, and we help them face those challenges. These are topics that I know my students are grappling with as they struggle to lead innovation and change in a post-COVID world. Actually, in a COVID and a post-COVID world. I hope the audience got some sense of the capabilities of Change Logic as we partner with leaders on leading innovation, change, and ambidexterity. Get in touch if you want to learn more. All the best.